Hi, you are watching Procurement and Supply Chain Live, and this session features Rachel Henney. She's Head of Procurement, Supplier Management, Third-Party Risk Management and Governance at The Standard, not the London-based evening newspaper, but the insurance and financial services organisation based out of Portland, Oregon. Rachel has more than 25 years of experience in procurement, supplier management, and enterprise shared services. In addition, Rachel's led procurement initiatives focused on lean value stream realization, with teams focused on change management, third-party risk management, strategic sourcing, supplier relationship management, quality control and insurance. The list goes on, procurement operations, and spend and supplier optimization. Rachel's belief is that procurement is best delivered as a partnership. Suppliers and customers connecting with a clear understanding of objectives and expected outcomes help support achievement of results that optimize spend and mitigate risk through mutually beneficial terms and conditions. So welcome to the show, Rachel.
Thank you so much.
Great to have you here, Rachel. And I believe you've got a presentation that you're going to talk us through today.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for joining me today to learn a little bit more about how the Standard Procurement Organization is leveraging lean management system in order to facilitate continuous improvement and growth. I hope that today's information is insightful. And of course, if you have questions after today, please feel free to reach out to me directly. First, what I'd like to talk about is how we incorporated the lean management system, or LMS, to define a clear roadmap to get us towards our vision. First, we needed to set that vision, and that's the long-term vision. And then we defined an associated guiding principles that would get us to our first North Star. Our vision is our long-term objective. And to get there, we needed to set near-term targets, and these targets would be supported by key strategic initiatives or objectives. And those would be utilized to assess new opportunities and include them in our 2 to 3 year roadmap. In order to ensure we monitor that impact on our ultimate outcomes, we'd need clear metrics focused on 4 lean principle components: delivery, productivity, quality, and morale. In order to ensure that we realized a change in our value stream and ensure delivered impactful results were accomplished, we required a methodology that was based on science. So let's go into that a little bit. Let me start with the results of that initial planning to give you a foundation. We defined our vision, North Star, and key objectives, and metrics that would help us track the impact on our roadmap. In order to do that, we had to understand our end-to-end value stream. So this is a result of that exercise. We wanted to be a trusted partner, leveraged as procurement and supplier management experts. We wanted to deliver value through early engagement with people that innovate and evolve. And our objectives to get there included optimizing our costs, simplifying our processes and procedures, and mitigating risk. With that foundation set, I want to talk to you a little bit about how lean guided us to make sure that those were effective and that we stayed on target. So here are the 3 objectives I just mentioned: cost optimization, simplification, and risk mitigation. We needed to define results that would measure the impact on our enterprise, on our division, and the people that worked for at supplier management and procurement organization, as well as individuals' metrics to make sure that their career path and engagement was on target. To do that, we needed a structure that helped focus us on continuous improvement. So Lean says that it's important to make sure that your foundation of work that you do continuously resets against that vision. Otherwise, you might lose your path. So our strategic projects and any execution of those strategies became the enabler to those strategic initiatives, which resulted in achievement of our roadmap objectives, leading towards our North Star, with the results impacting our vision. The vision serves as our ultimate destination, so everything was checked against that. So how does Lean support that? Well, let's talk a little bit about how our roadmap leverages Lean. First, we needed a process. We needed to make sure that we had a clear methodology to assess what work we were doing. Yes, there was standard work we had to do every day. Contracts needed to be written, purchasing had to be accomplished, but how do we make sure that the growth we're doing is aligned with our vision while we are doing our standard work? So we defined a very simple process of intake, assessing the new work and classifying that work against our vision and roadmap. We needed to figure out what the scope of this recommended change might be, or problem or opportunity, prioritize it, look at our capacity, and then schedule. While that sounds simple, we also had to make sure that we balanced our continuous improvement model with the work that we had to do every day. So let's look at how that looks. Here's our normal work. Individuals are doing work which drives towards your team goals, which ultimately impacts your division's accomplishment and company-wide objectives. How do these two things relate? If I started to do work on my daily work and write a contract and tried at the same time to do a project and didn't have capacity, I might struggle. So let's look at how we combine those division goals to our roadmap objectives. Intake in each process was required to go through a centralized capacity and demand management tool. The way that we identified this was mapping our value stream, looking at our end-to-end process and finding out when people were asked to work on projects and when people were asked to work on individual contracts or purchases. Looking at our capacity with both things at the same time helped us optimize. Then we were able to clearly accomplish both our standard work that had to be done every day and continuous improvement by ensuring that that capacity and demand was compared together. Next, we had to say, how do we know that we're accomplishing those projects and driving towards our vision? We needed the right metrics. We needed the right target outcomes. So we looked again to the lean management system and how you map your value stream. And what do I mean by value stream? Well, I think that it's important that you don't think about metrics as measures of what you're doing well or what you're not doing well, but rather a way to monitor whether or not the change that you've implemented or the activity that you've accomplished is meeting those objectives. So here's a quick way to look at what we did. Individuals and their career objectives are their standard work. But how do those feed into the team metrics we've just talked about around productivity, delivery, morale, and ultimately customer satisfaction? How do those impact our core objectives as a procurement organization around cost savings? And then how do we feed those into our CEO goals around financial targets, continuous improvement overall, and strategic transformation, as well as a focus on our people? So to clearly explain this, I want to take a step back and talk a little bit about what is lean management. Now I've enticed you, and you know that lean management has the opportunity to drive change and continuous improvement and help you focus your goals. So how does that work? Lean is a set of tools. There are many different ways that you can look at the way you do your work. What lean does is break those into a value stream of how you are delivering value to your customer. It focuses on your customers as the core component that you need to analyze and look at and assess over and over if you are delivering and meeting those objectives. How is LMS improving procurement? By establishing a way to track our work in progress and our capacity and results against that work in progress, we were able to examine and right-size work. We were able to say, let's look at a particular area of focus where we see our metrics are showing us in red. By focusing on those red metrics, we were able to drive immediate and impactful change in a short amount of time. Separately, we would break up that work. Looking at individual parts of the work, we were able to fully explore the opportunities that we had rather than myopically looking at one particular component in time. Let's use a very real-life example. Contracts come up for renewal within procurement. How do we make sure that we've assessed that we are effective and efficient in managing and monitoring that known volume of work, while in parallel, new unexpected purchases or unplanned work comes into your queue? Again, looking at the picture that I showed earlier, by assessing your team's capacity and domain expertise in parallel with new work and existing work, you're able to optimize how you deliver that value. By looking at those value streams in parallel, we were able to identify areas of opportunity. We started to then track those. We looked at how well we were doing internally in our morale. How was customer satisfaction changing? How timely were we with our results? And were we achieving cost savings goals in conjunction with our target? In order to look at those results and identify opportunities, we focused on red. We focused on opportunities that were challenging and created the most impact on our productivity, morale, or customer satisfaction. One of the ways in which we do that is called a huddle. It is a short meeting you do generally daily or a few times a week, and you surface those problems quickly. You look at things that are struggling to be accomplished, or you look at metrics that are starting to trend red. By enabling that at a daily level and discussing those problems or opportunities, we are able to see and celebrate those successes real time every day. We don't face the challenge of wondering how we're doing in our work because it's visible to everybody. Secondly, this provides that quick win opportunity to recognize success. Morale is always going to be impacted by making sure people see the results of their work, both in metrics, but in their accomplishments as well. So next, let's talk about what do we do when we see this problem? Here we are looking at our board. Something's in red. It's not done on time. It hasn't met the expectations of our customer internally or our stakeholders. What we've decided at the Standard to do is use a methodology called problem solving, which could also be called opportunity analysis for continuous improvement. Let's talk a little bit about each of the 4 phases of problem solving. First, plan. This is where you go and see, you look at the work, you talk to the people doing the work, you get information about it, and you define a clear problem statement. What's different about problem statements than there is an issue is that a problem statement looks at why. It looks at how you can impact that problem, and it's focused on science and data. Then you begin to experiment and test against that opportunity. An example might be, I think that we are slow when we are trying to execute a renewal with a particular supplier. Why is this supplier slow? Well, let's look at it. Why are they slow? Why is that impact happening? And what could we do about it? And how could we measure if it changes? So the next phase of the problem solving is to do. You anticipate that impact. What do we think we should see? Let's experiment against a couple small changes and then measure the results. Compare against that baseline, and then you check. What did we actually see? Was it what we expected? And what did we learn from that experiment? What are the insights that we gained, and how should we adjust? Based on the results that you see, what's our next step? Let's go and make that change permanent, or let's tweak that experiment a little bit. And then you plan and do it again. By doing this life cycle over and over, you identify not just problems and opportunities for continuous improvement, but also genuinely can confirm that the outcomes you were expecting were achieved and that you've met your long-term goals. So that solutions based on science and root causes being addressed, assumptions challenged, and learnings being recorded and measured help confirm that you've achieved the goal that you had set against your long-term vision and mission. The other thing I've mentioned a couple times is value stream mapping. So what is value stream? What is your value stream, and how is that different than a process map? Value stream looks at where you are today and what you're doing against where you want to be. And the value stream opportunities or problems are that gap in between. That gap is your opportunity to say, well, if I am here today and my goal is to be there, what is a way to figure out where I should target first? Now, a value stream map can look very complicated. Lots of pictures and images focused on that assessment of how you deliver value to your customers. Again, this is not a process flow, but how value is accomplished. By looking at that problem and identifying where do we have issues? Where are there challenges where we are not seeing the results that we believe we should be seeing? What do we do with that information? We identify that waste, and solution against resolving just that component of time, and then measure the results. So how do we know if we're successful? Well, let me show you one example. In our organization, we saw that the majority of work was meeting the target objective, but we still had really sour CSAT. There was low perception that due diligence was not always being completed correctly, and people were concerned that it took too much time. So let's look. The measure that we had initially, due diligence was being completed on time for the most part. You can see there are a few months that it was missed. What did we look at differently to change that picture? From our original metric to a change metric, we started to look at, well, what's working well? Let's break it out into smaller parts. By breaking it out, we found an existing supplier was hitting the mark, and that tended to be a majority of our work. But new suppliers or new scope are where we found the challenge. By breaking this original metric into a new way of looking at the data, we were able to revise those metrics and identify an opportunity where we could create visibility to what we needed to focus on in order to impact our CSAT. By implementing this change and measuring the results for specific scope, we were able to impact that end result of CSAT and also see an increase over time. I want to say that I appreciate that this is a challenging concept. So the last thing I will say is it is iterative. Lean management is not about finding a problem and implementing a fix. It's about testing things and experimenting. We tried a different couple opportunities of change, and ultimately we ended with, this is where we want to be, and this is how we see that the gaps being closed could reach that goal. Thank you so much for the time and listening to how the standard implemented lean management. I look forward to your questions and happy to meet with you offline as much as you'd like. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel. Really great presentation. Did a really great job there. And yeah, we have had some questions come in, so thank you for those. We'll try and get through as many as we can in the time that we've got left here. There's one here, Rachel. It says, how is the lean management system different than other approaches to continuous improvement?
Sure. The lean management system is different because it's a never-ending effort. It exposes and eliminates root causes of problems, small step implementation as opposed to big step implementation.
Okay, and another question here. It says, in lean, we've heard the term the 5 whys. Can you explain why this technique is a little bit more than that?
Sure. The 5 whys really makes your process an iterative and interrogative technique used to explore the cause and effect, relationships underlying a particular problem. And the primary goal is really to determine the root cause of the problem by repeating the question. Why? Each answer forms the basis of the next question. The 5 in the name derives from an anecdotal observation on the number of iterations needed to resolve the problem.
Okay. And what are the 5 principles of lean?
Sure. The thought of lean was thoroughly described in this book, The Machine That Changed the World, and a subsequent volume around lean thinking. It talks about the 5 things we should explore: value, value stream, flow, pull, and perfection.
Okay. And of those 5, which would you say is the most important in your opinion?
I think that what we have seen is that starting from your value stream and thinking about the customer first is the most important. Without starting on the value stream, you might not measure your value or your end state vision and objective as effectively as you could, knowing your current process.
Okay, when you talked about value stream there, what's the definition of value stream mapping?
Yeah, so value stream mapping, again, is looking at the difference between where you are today and where you want to be. What are you trying to accomplish for your customer or stakeholders? What is the gap between those two things, and how do you map opportunities within that workflow where there are issues or opportunities to improve? Value stream mapping essentially is looking at how do you deliver value to your end customer? And are you achieving those objectives and meeting their needs?
Okay, and for people who are watching this and considering a first step along this route, what would you recommend to somebody considering using the lean management system? Sorry.
Really great question. I think that as lean is an iterative process, the first step would really be to understand what does it mean to look and think as lean methodology? What are the principles? And how do I think about my work in a little bit more of an agile methodology to what has historically been workflow based or start to finish based? By starting with the methodology behind lean and reading and understanding the lean principles, you'd be building that foundation for yourself to understand how can I think about the work that I do differently. So the first step, take some time and learn about lean management system.
Okay, that's always sound advice. Absolutely. Take some time and learn about those first steps. Now, as Rachel said earlier as well, if you do have any more questions, then you can reach out to her directly, either through email or through the event app that we have here at the show as well. And that's where you can engage with all of our speakers and all of our attendees as well. So please do download the Brella app. And I'm sure if you've got any further questions, you can post them to Rachel and she'd be more than happy to address those. Won't you, Rachel?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for making time to learn a little bit about lean and the standard.
And thank you for joining us today, Rachel. Great insight from you. Thank you. Okay, great session there from Rachel. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a few minutes with the next session.